now I want to talk about the some of the cons or the flaws. You should know, especially if you're shorter in stature, that club bells come in different lengths. So, you see as we get into the bigger club bells, they get a little bit taller. The 45 is taller than the 25, which is taller than the 15. And for certain exercises and certain people with specific body types, you might have a difficulty performing an exercise, especially like if you have long arms in relation to the height of your torso or the length of your legs. You might have difficulty doing certain exercises where the club bell is swinging alongside you right over the ground. Just as an example, I'm 5'9", I'm average height, and there are certain exercises I cannot do with the 45-pound club bell. Like if I was going to do, let's just say, a front swing here, and I cannot do a front swing, a two-handed front swing with the 45-pound club bell unless I choke all the way up. And it's not a strength issue, it's a length issue. See, if I do this swing fully choked up, no problems, right? Nothing, it's not hitting the ground at all. But if I choke all the way down and I grip from the bottom here, the implement gets a little bit longer and it reaches a little further towards the ground. And I have to adjust my technique. And if I go back to my optimal technique, what happens? It hits the ground. So if I was shorter, that would be an even bigger problem, right? So if you're shorter in stature, that's something you might want to know. Could I remedy that by standing on a couple of blocks? Yeah. Is that the safest thing to do? Not necessarily. I want a really firm foundation for where I'm training. I don't want to be thinking about falling off a couple of blocks. But that's just something you should keep in mind. Not necessarily a flaw, but something you need to know. Okay, I want to get to these. You'll notice I have the knobs here off of these two, and it's because I want to show you a couple things. Come a little bit closer so you can see them. Let me grab those knobs too. So you have this knob here, and on this one the bolt froze to the knob here and broke off inside. So if I want to replace this knob, I can't do that anymore. Just a minor inconvenience, not the end of the world. I haven't broken one of these yet, and I've been using them for years. But it's something you should probably know about. The other thing is there's a little bit of a rust issue with these. I don't know if you can see that, but I've had to sand this down a couple times also on the grip itself. So you should just know about that. I mean, that's just standard wear and tear. I don't consider that necessarily a flaw, but it's something to think about. I'm kind of reaching here to come up with some legitimate flaws. But one thing I did want to highlight, this is something you definitely should know about. I think this is probably the biggest drawback of the club bell design, and that is of this crinkle coat grip texture. Now if I come real close here and show you, you should be able to see there's a little bit of a section that's missing in this grip texture, and that's just worn off from use. And this is my most recent club bell purchase. This has received the lightest use. There's already a good chunk of grip texture worn off on each side of the grip on my 25-pound club bells. So it just exposes a very smooth steel surface. And especially when like sweat comes into contact from my palms, it becomes very slippery in that section. It makes it a little bit harder to grip. Well, actually very hard to grip when it gets worse. Like with my 15s, they're pretty worn off. And is that a flaw? Yes, it definitely is. I don't know if there's a better way to apply the coat, but it's something you need to know about. So chalk helps with that. Eventually I might have to go with grip tape, but it's just something you'll have to deal with. It's not a perfect tool, like I said, but I think it's a great tool as is. So those are all the pros and cons, all the major ones anyways. Like I said before, great tool, not perfect. I think it's the best all-around weight swinging tool that money can buy. And now I'd like to touch on some more unique club bell training factors. These aren't necessarily pros and cons, they're just more of qualities of club bell training and of club bells. Some of these are shared by other weight swinging equipment, but it's important for you to understand these before you buy. Again, I've got my notes here. The first one is the displaced center of mass, and I've talked about a few of these things before, but I want to make sure you understand the full implications of this, so that you understand, why I recommend the club bell. The displaced center of mass. Basically, the weight of the club bell is up here in the head, and you grip it far away from where that center of mass is. So there's a leverage challenge, and that's not true with the dumbbell, where you grip in the center of the mass, in between the two sections of mass. There's not a leverage challenge with that. The club bell is like a, let me show you right here. Here we go. I've got a kettlebell. This is a great example. The kettlebell is, the weight is offset from where you grip it. But with the club bell, it's to a much greater extent. There's a much bigger leverage disadvantage with the club bell than with the kettlebell, because there's really not that much distance between where I grip it and where the weight of the kettlebell is placed. But with a club bell, it's a pretty good distance. So that displaced center of mass does two things. It creates leverage, and it also means that the club bell that we use can be very light. You don't need a very heavy club bell to get a really good training effect, because you're gripping so far away from the actual weight. It feels much heavier than it really is. And anybody who's ever picked up any size club bell will know. They'll be like, no way, there's no way that's 25 pounds. That's got to be way heavier. Even with a 15 or even a mini club bell, people are surprised. It's because it just feels a lot heavier. So that displaced center of mass, it's important to understand that. Club bells can be lifted, but they're best used when they are swung, and not just swung in a very simple sense, but swung three-dimensionally. When you're lifting weights, when you're lifting barbells and dumbbells, you tend to work in one, maybe two planes of motion. With a club bell, you can work in all three planes of motion. It's truly a three-dimensional strength training tool, which is remarkable because we live and work in 3 dimensions. We're never truly just doing something in 1 or 2 dimensions. Club bell can swing all around you in all 3 planes of movement and in 6 degrees of freedom. The next one. Club bells create stress through traction or decompression, not strain through compression. So, to demonstrate, if I'm swinging this club bell, the club bell is constantly pulling away from me in almost all club bell exercises. The club bell wants to launch off away from me. So that's creating traction in my joints, which is basically, like right now it's decompressing my elbow joint because it's pulling my elbow joint apart. If you imagine my knuckles are a joint capsule, it's pulling on it and allowing nutrition and lubrication to rush in there, as opposed to like in a really heavy dumbbell or barbell exercise where the joints get just compressed and pushed together and all that lubrication, all that nutrition gets squeezed out. So it's a traction-based exercise, a lot of them. So you get excellent traction in your joints. So it's health restorative. It's health first. It's a health first training tool. It can be used in compression-based exercises, and a lot of club bell exercises are compression-based, but you get a much more balanced training effect in your joints and your connective tissues, those ligaments and tendons, because it creates a positive adaptive stress instead of just this breakdown that we get from very compressive exercises. So that's another really big advantage that is unique to club bells. Okay, the last sort of unique quality of the club bell is the fun factor. And this is a lot more important than you might think. Don't just shrug it off like, whatever, fun. Who needs fun? I'm looking for something to work hard and train my body and strength and conditioning. And you're going to get all that. But I know that if you're not having fun in your training, whether you're in the strength and conditioning, fitness training, you're training for a sport or a job, you need to have fun in order to keep doing it. If it's not fun, you're not going to keep doing it. You're going to dread it. You're not going to enjoy it. And with the club bell, there's just so much versatility. There's so many different training options that it's really hard to bore yourself because there's always something new you can be trying. There's such a depth in the skill development possible. There's such a broad application that it's a really fun tool to use, and it's fun to, another way of saying it is it's a great adaptive tool, because as you get better with the club bell, more possibilities open up. There's, if you develop some very basic club bell training skills, sort of like the sky is the limit, and you're able to not just do the traditional exercises, but combination routines, and come up with your own club bell exercises. There's a lot of fun available with training with the this, and I don't think that should be overlooked. I think that's one of the most important qualities of any piece of training equipment. If there's a piece of training equipment that nobody likes using, then it's virtually useless, at least in my book. Okay, well that leads me to my next point, which is who is the Clubbell best suited for and who is it not best suited for? I think there's three main groups that the Clubbell is best suited for, and I think it goes without saying that the Clubbell is best suited for athletes, people who live and train and move in 3 dimensions, have very athletic sports. You know, the Clubbell is a 3-dimensional training tool. It trains in 3 planes of movement and in the 6 degrees of freedom. It's one of the most versatile tools, and it trains strength through these full ranges of motion that you just don't get with more conventional training tools. So it's almost like brain dead obvious. The Clubbell is perfect for athletes, but not just athletes. There's a couple other groups. Second one is service people, like military, firefighters, law enforcement, etc. People who have very physically demanding jobs or just a physically demanding lifestyle. This is another great option, perfect for those situations. But third is you general fitness folks, you fitness trainees, people who just want to look and feel their best, who want to trim up their midsection, want to get a little stronger. This is perfect. It's a great training tool. It's so versatile. It's not just a dumbbell. It's not just a barbell. There's so many more possibilities that you can use with this, and it's fun. And I don't think that should be overlooked. It's something unique. It's something new. If you haven't used it before, I highly recommend that you look into getting a Clubbell or a pair of Clubbells. So who is it not best suited for? Well, I think most obviously bodybuilders. If you are a competitive bodybuilder, this probably isn't going to help you prepare for competition. You might find it useful in a limited capacity for shoulder development. I think with posterior delt development, this might come especially in handy where that tends to be a trouble area with some bodybuilders. But other than that, it's probably not going to be that useful. You may find some better uses for it. Powerlifters, again, it's probably not going to help you with your numbers. You might get some indirect carryover from your grip strength developed in the Clubbell training to like your pulling strength in the deadlift, maybe. But again, this is probably not the best tool for you. There's better methods. Let's not try and reinvent the wheel here. Powerlifters know how to train for powerlifting, and the new kid on the block isn't the best thing for that. Olympic weightlifters, same thing. This probably isn't going to help you too much. You might get some indirect benefits from the leg drive developed from this. Leg drive being that pushing into the ground when you're doing it, and that hip snap that happens, when you're doing like a barbell clean and jerk or a barbell snatch. There might be some carryover, but again, this isn't the best tool for those 3 situations. But for almost everything else, I think this is an excellent training tool for its intended purposes. So if you have any questions about Clubbell training or about Clubbells, I would love to hear from you. If you just think I'm full of it, I'd still love to hear from you. I'd love to hear some criticisms or some constructive feedback about this review, about Clubbell training. I'm open to discussion. I'm an open resource for you. If you visit my website, physicalliving.com, you can find a lot of information on Clubbells already published, Clubbell routines, Clubbell exercises, just a lot of cool info. If something that you're looking for isn't on there, be happy to try and get it up there in the future. You can send me a message or leave a comment somewhere, and maybe I'll feature your suggestion in an upcoming article or video. Well, I guess that about wraps things up. Thank you very much for watching my review video. I really appreciate your time. I know it's valuable to you. I hope you learned a lot and got all of your questions answered. If you do decide to make a purchase and you're going to invest in a Clubbell or 2 and you'd like to help a brother out, you can visit physicalliving.com/buy Clubbells. I'll provide a link below this video to make it easier. And what that is my affiliate link that will credit me with a small percentage of your sale. And you can rest assured that I would be endorsing these and recommending these whether or not there was any financial incentive in it for me. And I'll tell you what I'll do for you is that if you send me your receipt after you've made a purchase, I'd like to send you a free gift, just as a way of saying thanks. So all you have to do is when you get that confirmation email, which is the receipt from your purchase, you just forward that to me, and I'd be happy to hook you up with your free gift immediately. So this is John Sifferman from physicalliving.com. Take care.